This program is a paid commercial announcement from Jacob Media Partners and does not reflect the views of WPHT or its management.
Now, on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, WPHT HD, WOGL HD3 Philadelphia. It's Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond. From the courtroom to the boardroom to Talk Radio 1210. Get educated on the law from one of the most powerful attorneys in the country. Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond, featuring who's who in the Delaware Valley legal community. Welcome to the courtroom, and welcome to Legal Eagles Radio, and your host, Sam Pond.
And welcome in, everyone, to Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond. And we welcome everybody in live tonight here on Talk Radio 1210, WPHT, as we come to you live at Chickie's and Pete's down in South Philadelphia. It is our first opportunity to come out on the road with Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond. And Sam, you picked a great spot as for the live show tonight. Glad to be here. Full house here at Chickie's for the big show.
Joe, I don't know about being on the roads tonight. We picked a heck of a night to come to Chickie and Pete's, and it looks like March is coming in like a lion. But I want to thank everyone for coming out on this snowy evening. And look, it's been a heck of a weekend, a heck of a week in Philadelphia sports here at Chickie and Pete's. We got Bryce Harper. Bryce Harper. You know, I should have talked about sport agent law because he's got a hell of an agent. I'm going to tell you, when you go out, Tommy Giordano, when you sign that hockey contract, get Boros as your agent because you're going to get a good deal. Look, we could talk about anything this evening, and I've got the opportunity to talk about whatever I want to talk about in the law every week, Joe Doc.
Yep.
And I get suggestions about what my monologue should be. And one of them was to talk about sport agency. The other one was to talk about something a little bit more academic, and that was the First Amendment about free speech, freedom of press, freedom of religion, the events in D.C. we could have talked about, and whether or not, what legal ramifications do they have. We could have also talked about insurance, law, something else, all these things that we covered. But since we're at Chickie and Pete's, since we're here in South Philly, I wanted to get back to why we have this show. What is the purpose of this show? And why should you be listening to this show? Now, you could listen to any show about a diet show or even a sports show, and that's great. But the most important thing in your life is to know about your rights as a citizen and the body of laws that this great democracy has. And folks, you got to get educated. We're going to help you get there. We're going to help you get there. That's the purpose. It's to educate. It's to empower you as a listener. That's our mission. Get some knowledge about the law. Quite frankly, not only do we want to give you knowledge about the law, and that's the purpose and mission of this show, but we want you to wake up as a citizen. We want you to wake up as a citizen. We want you to get engaged. We want to resurrect your interest in our democracy. And we want to slay these great beasts. There's two great beasts. Number one is ignorance. Ignorance. That means you don't have knowledge, but you can get knowledge. The second is apathy. Don't sit on the sidelines. Get in the game. Get in the game of understanding what our country is about, what our Constitution's about, what are our bodies of law. Get into it. It's not hard. It's not that complicated. It's not that academic. We've been sending it out since we've had this show week in and week out. Look, some of the topics we talked about that are important in your life, that affect your life. I look at the barmaids, I look at the bar backs, I look at the wait staff. They all have issues. They're in employment. They're working. This lovely lady walking by me, she could have an employment case. If she gets hurt on the job, does she have a workers' compensation case? She has a paycheck. She gets 6% of that paycheck taken out every week for Social Security. What is she getting? Do you know? You got to find out. You got to educate yourself. It's your money. It's your life. It's your family's life. What about we have a great lineup tonight? Are you getting divorced? We have a divorce lawyer to tell you about that. It's simple. She's going to tell you in 12, 13 minutes what your rights are. She's going to tell you that. We have the access to so much legal entities and institutions in Philadelphia. We have community legal services. We have great talkers tonight that are going to talk about someone incarcerated for over 30 years, couldn't get a lawyer. We have access to pro bono, people doing free legal services. When someone says about a free consultation, Mr. Lynch, you're going to give a free consultation. You're going to look at their insurance policy. It's there. Get it. Get engaged. Take the time to find out what your rights are. You're buying a house. We talked about this on the show, Joe Kraus, about real estate. Go see a lawyer. Find out the biggest purchase of your life you need to know. But you also need to know how do we make our laws. So I really want everyone to step back and understand again that you have a little bit of civic responsibility and you need to know how our government is set up. You talk about separation of powers, the three branches of government. Know what the three branches of government. Know the Constitution. We have a federal Constitution and a state Constitution. They're different. You should know that we have both. What's impeachment? We talked about that in the show. It's a very, very easy concept. Everyone says what it is. Find out what it is before you express your opinion about it. Don't talk like an ignoramus. Understand what these issues are. What's the Second Amendment? It's a big, hot issue about guns. We need to know what the Second Amendment says. What is a national emergency? We talked about that, Joe Doc, on the show.
Yep.
What is it? We're going to have a vote in Congress about it. Understand what it is. We're stronger. We're stronger if everyone at the bar, everyone at the booth gets engaged and understands about our laws. We are going to be a stronger, better country if that happens. Never stop learning. Thanks for being here. We got a great show. Let's get at it.
This is Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond as we come to you on this Sunday night on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. We're live from Chickie's and Pete's. We'll begin the broadcast back in a moment. And back here live on Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond as we come to you from Chickie's and Pete's in South Philadelphia. We're live on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. As Sam referenced in his opening monologue and his opening introduction tonight, J-Doc, we are loaded with a great lineup of attorneys. Let's lead the listening audience, if we can, right into our upcoming segment, Sam. Emeka Igwe is sitting to your left, and to your right is Terrence Jones. Now, I'll let I'll let Emeka take the story from there and set the table for our audience. This is Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond. Sam?
Emeka, thanks for being on the show. Look, you've been in the press over the last couple of weeks about this case. I referenced it in my monologue. Really an interesting case. I think our listeners are fascinated. I think readers online, readers in the press have really been fascinated about this case, your client. Tell me about how you, first of all, let me ask you this. Tell me about your practice. Where do you practice? What do you do?
Sam, first of all, thank you for having me on your show and giving us this platform to speak about our case on the Daniels. As far as my practice, I'm here in Philadelphia. We've been here for the last 8 years. We do mostly personal injury. Lately, we've been getting into a lot of civil rights cases. I
know that your background is in the district attorney's office. Nick Lieberman, my office is here. He's going to speak later. Also, we have 3 ex-ADAs, assistant district attorneys, in our office, in our lineup. You're also a JAG.
That's correct.
In other words, you're in the military. You're serving now?
I'm serving. I came from drill this morning.
I don't want to waste a lot of time on the JAG. But
sure.
God bless.
Thank
you very much for your service, by the way.
You, Sam.
Don't say that enough.
Thank
Seriously.
You, Sam. Appreciate it.
I'm not even going to get on a rant about the VA and all that, but we'll deal with that later.
Sure.
What's a JAG? Just tell us about the JAG program real quick.
A JAG is a military lawyer. We help soldiers with all kinds of legal issues. Soldiers get in trouble just like people in the civilian world. So whatever legal issues that they have going on, we as JAG officers help with those legal issues.
And I know your investigator, Terrence Jones, is with us this evening as well.
Correct. Fascinating
case. Tell me a little bit about what happened, because we hear all the time about someone going to jail. And, that's why our Constitution says innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely.
Because I think, look, we have the Constitution protects our property and our liberty. More importantly, our liberty.
Right.
We have a greater burden of proof in regard to taking away someone's liberty, i.e., beyond a reasonable doubt, to put someone away and take their liberty. Someone's liberty was taken away for almost 40 years. Tell us about this case.
Correct. And let me just say, Sam, there's a reason why our legal system is set up to make it harder for someone to go to jail, because it's based upon the premise that it's better for a guilty person to get off than an innocent person go to jail. And that's what we have in the case of Elmer Daniels. Elmer was a man in the state of Delaware who was given a life sentence for allegedly raping a 15-year-old female back in 1980. In a nutshell, this 15-year-old female went to a party. She left the party with another 15-year-old male who would later on become the state's key witness. They went to some train tracks in Wilmington, Delaware. While the train tracks, their stories differ. According to the 15-year-old male, he engaged in sexual intercourse with the 15-year-old female. 15-year-old female said that never occurred. Regardless of whose story you want to believe, they both say that while at the train tracks, 18-year-old male, who they later alleged was my client, came up to them. As a result, the 15-year-old male ran away, and the 18-year-old client, who said he allegedly raped her at the train tracks. After this alleged rape, she went back to the party where the police were called, and they naturally wanted to speak to the 15-year-old male, and he was the one, after changing his stories 4 different times, 4 different occasions, completely made up a name the first time around, said it was some guy named Jake Johnson. Finally, when they charged him with hindering prosecution and threatened to lock him up for the rape, that's when for the first time he came up with the name Elmer. He couldn't remember his last name, but he said he knew it was Elmer because they were in the same 8th grade math class together.
So how'd you get the case? How did this come into your office? So
Elmer spent 36 years continuously in prison before he was released briefly on parole with 2 conditions. One, obtain and maintain employment, which he did, before a police agency called over to his job and said, because he's a convicted felon, they were going to put up posters and have him hit the patrons to let them know that he was a convicted felon. So as a result, the job terminated him from his position. So that was the first violation. The second one was because he was a convicted sex offender, he had to take these classes in order to get rehabilitated. At the end of taking those classes, they said he had to admit guilt, which he refused because he said he was innocent. That was the second violation. So anyway, after serving 36 years continuously, he was let out briefly. I met him at an expungement and pardon clinic where I was a guest speaker. He came up to me, had some documents with him that showed that he was innocent. I told him I'll look into it, and 6 months later, he was sent back to jail. And so we worked on the case for 2.5 years with my lead investigator, Terrence Jones, before we were able to prove conclusively that he was, in fact, an innocent man.
Was this a pro bono case for you?
To this day, Sam, we haven't received a dime on the case.
And I want all the listeners to understand the concept of pro bono. And most big law firms in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, and I was talking to Tom Giordano on our drive over here, our office, and I have Andrea from our office here as well, and Nick, I'm looking at these folks out in the audience. We're now having a formal pro bono program in our office at Ponley Hockey. We do a lot of pro bono. It's just not formalized. People have to understand there's a lot of pro bono attorneys. We actually have an obligation, as far as I can tell,
sure,
a professional responsibility to do free legal work, pro bono work. You've done this for free.
Correct.
Years of work.
Yeah.
So you get the case. How did you find out what happened going back 36 years?
Okay. And I'll leave way for my main investigator to get into the case and with some of the things that he did on the case. But there's 2 key pieces of evidence that I want your listeners to know that was a key to getting Elmer released. One was a special agent from the FBI who testified falsely that he could make...
Is this a federal case?
It was a state case, but because it was hair that was recovered from the victim's underwear and hair that was recovered from my client's pants, they sent the hair to the FBI in order to get analysis.
I see.
So there was a special agent by the name of Michael P. Malone. Michael P. Malone was a star of the FBI's forensic laboratory. He went around the whole country saying that he could make identifications based upon hair analysis. And in Elmer's case, he said it was a double match, that the hair on the victim's underwear matched Elmer and the hair on Elmer's pants matched the victim. Now, to this day, without the use of DNA, you can't tell 2 pieces of hair. You can't really even tell them apart from animal hair. But he would say that he could make these identifications. And in Elmer's case, he testified to the detriment of Elmer that it was a double match. So when we got involved in the case, we sent the transcripts to the FBI, and the FBI took the extraordinary step of writing to the Attorney General of Delaware, stating in this case, they admit that the agent testified falsely.
Whoa, hold on, wait, let me back up. This is DNA analysis, this is DNA testimony before DNA analysis.
Correct, absolutely. And you can imagine how devastating that was, because that was the DNA supposedly of today.
So the government wrote a letter to the Attorney General of Delaware, and they said...
Correct. A special counsel, just like you hear Special Counsel Mueller, special counsel was appointed specifically for these cases. Special Counsel Norman Wong wrote a letter to the Attorney General of Delaware stating that after reviewing the transcripts, they admit that in this particular case, their agent testified beyond the means of science, a.k.a. he testified falsely.
What else did you do to investigate this case to be able to have enough evidence to go back retroactively 36 years and overturn this verdict?
I can answer that. So what happened was I was able to get the school transcripts because the witness had said that they were in the same 8th grade math class at Byron Middle School. There was a 3-year age difference between Elmer Daniels and that witness who was 15. So I got the school transcripts of Elmer Daniels at the high school that showed that he was not in the same 8th grade math class and showed that he didn't even have a math class.
That's incredible.
At the time that, in 1978, 2 years prior. So was able to get the school transcripts to prove that they did not go to the same school. And through that, it showed that the witness had testified falsely and had used a false identification.
Were you able to then today, be able to take some of that evidence, the strands, and have an analysis done?
So unfortunately, the state of Delaware destroyed all the forensic evidence. At some point, there existed hair, blood, semen, and fingerprint evidence, and unfortunately, they destroyed all the evidence in this case. So even though we're not able to scientifically exonerate Mr. Daniels, I want your listeners to know that all the evidence at the time and since we've done an investigation points to the fact that Mr. Daniels is in fact innocent. It's not someone just getting off on a technicality. He served 39 years. He was given a life sentence at the age of 18 for a crime he didn't commit.
So what's the process? I'm getting an indication we're running up against a break. What I'd like to talk about when we come back, a little bit more about your investigation, and then what's the process? What do you do to go back and overturn this? How's that work?
Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond. We'll get to a commercial break. We'll continue our dialogue with Emeka Igwe, who's joining us on set, along with Terrence Jones. Also on deck as we roll along, Adam Malamut and Robert Lynch are with us as well. J-Doc and I are just spectators tonight, consuming some incredible information here on Talk Radio 1210. WPHT. Back in a moment. And back here live on Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond here on Talk Radio 1210. WPHT as we come to you on a Sunday night around the Delaware Valley, and we come to you live from Chickies and Pete's down in South Philadelphia, visiting with Emeka Igwe and Terrence Jones. Sam's special guest on the set live down here at Chickies and Pete's. Sam, looked pretty good for a live show tonight. Well done, sir.
Well, thanks, Joe. Look, Joe, we've got, as always, this always happens on our show, Joe Doc.
Not enough time. Right.
There's not enough time.
Right.
We always run. Why is the show only an hour? So look,
we run out.
Joe, have you had your crowd fries? So look, we that's all he wanted. That's why he's here.
I told Pete
on
personally.
A snowy night. That's the only way we got him down here.
I told Pete that he's personally responsible for me not being able to stay on my diet, for crying out loud.
And you did break that tonight, J-Doc.
He broke it. What?
Crushed it.
I know I was in trouble as soon as we did the live show.
I saw him keep his diet for an hour once. Look, the bottom line is we got to continue this conversation right here and now, because we didn't cover something that popped in my mind, and it goes right back to Terrence, what you said about the investigator. And Joe Doc is right on these type of things. Joe, what popped in your mind?
Well, Emeka, I was going to say to Emeka and Terrence, who was their legal representation at the time that literally allowed this to go on?
Competent counsel or incompetent counsel?
So, incompetent counsel. I mean, to the point where you hear in the news the word collusion. It was so bad, the representation was so bad that it went beyond incompetency. It went to the point where it was almost collusion. And there were basic things, like we talked about the transcripts. So the obvious question is, if this is something that we could have uncovered 36 years later, how easy would it have been for his defense counsel to go get the transcripts? Now, keep in mind, Elmer testified at trial that he was not in the same 8th grade math class, and there was a 3-year age difference. So obviously, any competent attorney would have pulled those transcripts to say, hey, my client was not, in the same 8th grade math class as this witness, and totally discredited him right there.
Not to mention, somebody had to know that you could, that you can't match. I mean, it almost reminds me of having somebody with some kind of like eyeglass looking at the strands of hair, since they didn't have DNA back then. I mean, that had to be somewhat obvious to a seasoned attorney back then.
So, unfortunately, it wasn't just this FBI agent, and this is important for listeners to know because, as we said, we're a government that is off the people, for the people, and the government is accountable to us. And what people need to know is that to this day, there's people, thousands of people across this nation who are in jail as a result of the false testimony, not just of this FBI agent. He was a star forensic FBI agent, but the whole FBI lab was testifying falsely. And unless there's an attorney that takes the case pro bono, how would they uncover all this false evidence that was done on the case?
Well, keep it up, because and I want to get into the process. So now, what do you do to get this overturned and get him free and clear? And then you can take the next action. We also want to talk about the nonprofit you set up.
Correct.
And whether or not, what kind of compensation would he get? Obviously, you can never pay someone back for their liberty. Sure. That's priceless.
Sure.
But we can talk about that. What's the process of getting this expunged or overturned?
So, Sam, that's already been done. So the state of Delaware took the extraordinary step of overturning the indictment against Mr. Daniels. What that means is he's put in a legal position as if he was never convicted. So as he stands today, he's an innocent man. They did that on their own. They took their own motion, which is extraordinary. That almost never happens. In the history of this country, there's probably been less than 10 times that's been done without a motion being filed. But the evidence was so overwhelming in this case that they took that extraordinary step to remove the indictment.
So you've had
us putting pressure on them. With us putting pressure on them.
Well, yeah, but they did the right thing apparently.
Yes.
But you had to be the impetus and you did to leverage this. But that's what happens, and that's why counsel's there.
Correct.
And that's the body of law, and that's why it's good to have competent counsel that's passionate and compassionate and believes in what they're doing about client first. Client first.
Always client first.
All right. So let's talk about this. You set up a nonprofit, and also there's a component here to get him compensated. Tell us about. Let's start with the nonprofit. What's the nonprofit about that you started?
So after Elmer's case, Terrence and I were inspired to help out similarly situated people who have been wrongfully convicted and incarcerated. So we started a nonprofit organization called Absolute Justice. Absolute Justice is dedicated to uncovering a lot of these cases. The Innocent Project is probably the most well-known organization. The Innocent Project mostly focuses on cases that have DNA. In Elmer's case, where the DNA has been destroyed, we like to get involved in those kind of cases where convictions based upon false witness statements or where there is no DNA. We'll look at those kind of cases. So we have a website, absolutejusticeproject.org, that people can go to and help support the mission. We've gotten over 200 letters, Terrence, from across the country of people similar, and we're taking all these cases pro bono. So any support from the public would definitely help.
Do me a favor, say it again. Give me the website again, and I'm just asking my staff to look into this as well, because we clearly want to support this. We want justice. Justice is the key.
Thank you, Sam. The name of the organization is Absolute Justice. You can find out more at absolutejusticeproject.org. or call us at 877-758-7842. On the website, too, you can also help Elmer Daniels. Elmer was released with just a T-shirt and the pants he had on. He was given no resources or compensation by the state of Delaware. So you can go on there to go to the GoFundMe account at absolutejusticeproject.org and help Elmer with his GoFundMe account.
So now Elmer is going to have a civil suit. Is there going to be a civil suit filed and attempt to get him something?
Correct. We're working on two fronts. First, we're trying to do the extraordinary step in the state of Delaware. So Delaware is one of 17 states that doesn't have a law in the book to compensate those who have been wrongfully convicted. So we're working with the state legislature to draft a bill. It's called a private compensation bill to specifically compensate Elmer. So all the constituents, I'm a constituent of Delaware, please join me, write your constituents and say support this bill to compensate Elmer Daniels for 39 years that he had to spend in jail for a crime he didn't commit. We're also working on a federal lawsuit against the FBI. We're going to give them an opportunity to do the right thing and compensate Mr. Daniels, but if they refuse to compensate him, then we have no choice but to go into litigation.
Well, it's Joe Doc.
Well, I wanted to say, you talk about the issues with the case, but also thinking about the epidemic of individuals who couldn't afford good counsel.
Right.
I mean, I'm listening to you as a member of the general public.
Yes.
And you got to just use your imagination.
Right.
How often could this be going on?
More often than people realize, unfortunately. And and justice is a two-edged sword. Yes, those who have committed crimes should be prosecuted, should be punished. But the other side is if there's empirical evidence that shows that someone is innocent, then in the interest of justice, you have to work to overturn the conviction or look into those kind of cases.
Amen. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Thanks for being on the show. Love to have you back to get an update as to what's going on. And thanks for the information to help Elmer and actually the information about the nonprofit you had to make a difference in maybe just one more life. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, sir.
Emeka Igwe joining us here along with Terrence Jones on Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond as we come to you live from Chickies and Pete's. We'll get to a commercial break. Robert Lynch and Adam Malamut on deck. And still to come, who is Sonny Wimberly? We'll introduce you to him after the break. Back here live on Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond as we broadcast you tonight live in South Philadelphia from down at Chickies and Pete's. Special thanks, Sam, to Emeka Igwe. Just an incredible story. We'll have the entire show up on the podcast on pondlehockey.com. If you missed any of the story or the conversation with Emeka and Terrence, it's an absolute must listen to.
But I think it's the thing that's really important here is the profession, the honor of representing a client. And the fact that with the license to practice law, you make a difference in people's lives. We talk about it all the time in our firm about the power of being able to represent someone and make a difference. And what a difference on a large scale. And going forward is going to make a difference in a lot of other lives just to have justice. Just to have justice. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, aren't we, Joe Kraus, in regard to this program? Look, I've got Mr. Lynch, I've got Mr. Malumet, I've got Mr. Giordano, my wonderful partner. We're going to shift gears a little bit and get back to some practical things that happen in everyday
Don't forget
life.
J-Doc, Sam.
I'm down here. I'm in the little seat. I feel like I'm in an office and I'm in a
J-Doc,
little seat.
when we go into the next break, I'm moving you out of that chair for the final segment.
The cheese fries are right in range here. Well, don't do that.
Yeah, don't run. But it's very, very important. And I said earlier in the monologue, and I want to start with Tommy Giordano because, one of my pet peeves is the fact that when we go to large audiences, and I would actually ask the audience because, who out there gets a paycheck? Raise a hand. Okay. You see where that FICA on your paycheck comes out? Is that it, Tommy? That 6% that comes out of your paycheck? Nick, we've got our tech here. Getting it, he gets a paycheck. What comes out when that 6.1%?
He works for Krause. I wouldn't bet on that.
2% comes out of your paycheck.
Hey, watch that, Jay.
Where's that money going? Where's 6.2? Andrew's getting corrected. Where's that money going? You're giving it to the government. What happens to it? And I'm looking around. I don't see any hands, but when we go to meetings and we talk about this and we say, where's the money go? What are you getting? The response, there's crickets, Joe Kraus. There's no response. People don't know where this money is going. If you had money coming out of your check in a 401k, or if you're buying a disability policy, or if you're investing in something else, you would know where that money goes. We're just lambs to the slaughter. We're just lambs to the slaughter. Why don't we know where this money's coming? Where's it going? Well, that money, I'm going to turn it over to Tom Giordano because he's going to tell us where that money goes.
We're on live radio here.
Can we hear Tommy Giordano? because I generally say this. I'm giving Tom the chance to say it. And sure enough, someone has intervened. Not Tommy.
Okay, so this is karma, because this happens every time you and I go to a union meeting, Sam. You buy three things. And the first thing you buy, and I think most people know what you get, and that's retirement. You're 62, you're 67, you're 70. You know that when you retire, you're going to get a benefit because you paid into it. The second is Social Security disability. And that is a private disability policy that you are paying. Of that 6.2%, about 0.9% is going into the disability trust fund. So that if, God forbid, something happens to you and you cannot work, you can apply for Social Security disability. And the third thing you pay for, Sam, it's Medicare. It's medical insurance that most people who are 65 in this country will receive. But if you're found disabled under the Social Security Administration disability plan, you will get Medicare as well.
So just so I'm clear, through the federal government, under FDR, who created the Social Security system during the Great Depression, he put in a social safety net that is funded by our citizens, everyone here that gets a paycheck. And I'm looking at all these folks, most of them probably get a paycheck. And basically what you bought was, you bought a medical plan, you bought a disability plan, and you bought a retirement plan. That's a pretty good thing that's funded by our citizens and that they can get so that we don't, you know what, Joe Doc? Before Social Security disability, 90% of our elderly lived in poverty because they had nothing after they stopped working, after they got beat up in the Industrial Revolution. They had no access to medical care. They had to rely upon private charity, upon families. This is there for all of our benefits, so we have a stronger society. And it's a great system. Tom, if you get Social Security, retirement is automatic at 62. You don't get Medicare. You get a reduced rate. It's then at 66, depending on your date of birth. Medicare comes at retirement. Social Security disability is not automatic, though, right?
That's correct, Sam. And you have to apply for it. And one of the things you always say at these meetings that I always like is that you didn't ask for this money to be taken away. You actually sometimes call it government theft. You know, and what's wrong here is people don't realize that this program is in place for you if you're unable to work. And it's hard to get. It's probably the hardest Social Security disability system in the free world. One of the hardest. I mean, where 70% of applicants are denied, which is why I know I've limited time. So I have to push. If you apply and you get denied, you have to appeal. You have to keep fighting. Because you know what? You paid into it. All you have to prove, you simply cannot do the work that you've done in the past. And if you're a little younger, under 50, you can't do any other work in the economy.
Well, I said it was government theft if you were ignorant as to what they were taking the money out of, because it would just appear that the government's taking money out of your check and they're just taking money out of it. You don't know what you're getting. So it's not theft. It's a great system, but understand what it is. And I think I actually think, Joe Kraus, how do you? I think actually we ought to have, when we hire someone, we should do, where's our HR people? When you hire someone, you sit down and say, this is what you're getting that money coming out for, where it's going. I think all employers, Adam, should do that. Bob, I think that these are things that we should be doing as employers to educate our employees. Tom, now, it gets a little easier if you're over 50 to get Social Security disability, and even easier at 55, because then you can't go back to the kind of work that you were doing before.
Yeah, that's correct, Sam. I mean, when we speak, we're typically speaking to the individuals who are 49 and up. And we're telling them, look, you've been doing this job. Let's say you've been a carpenter for the last 15, 20, 30 years. If your medical conditions, and by the way, it can be anything. It could be a work-related injury. It could be a personal injury, an accident. It could be a disease. It could be something that you did to yourself at home. But if those conditions are keeping you from doing the job that you've done your whole life, you should apply.
And there's a difference between Social Security disability and Social Security income. And there's a difference between Medicare and Medicaid. Social Security income is for folks that are indigent or poor and don't have assets?
That's correct. SSI, Supplemental Security Income, is for individuals who have never paid in, but it's also for individuals, children, who never had the opportunity to pay in. So if you're born with a condition that is affecting your ability to learn, and affecting your ability to thrive and grow, you can get benefits as well.
And they don't get Medicare, they get Medicaid.
Correct.
And for children, if I was working and I'm 53 years old or 50 or 45 and I get Social Security disability and I get 3 kids, my family gets a benefit as well.
That's correct. This is one of the things I think the government did right. They understand that if you have children, your expenses are going to be higher. So therefore, if you're receiving disability, if you have children under the age of 18, they're going to get benefits every month until they hit the age of 18.
Well, look, Adam, tell me a little bit, and Bob, we're going to have to get you back on in the second hour, Joe Doc, because I just had Tom eat up their time. But Adam, tell me what you run into about people. Do they know their rights?
So, Sam, first of all, thank you for having me back. We always have a good time on this show. And
you've been on the show how many times? 10, 15?
Probably 15,
okay.
17.
Okay.
What we know is consumers don't know what they don't know. So the listeners don't know what their rights are. And just with Social Security, you gave some amazing statistics, and Tom filled in the blanks. People don't know what they're buying with insurance. They don't know whether it's good policies, whether it's policies that are going to cover them. And right before the show, Robert and I spoke, and we talked about the fact that, insurance companies aren't your friends. They're not going to tell you, hey, you have good coverage, you don't have good coverage. You need to talk to a professional. I've never seen a case where an insurance company has stood up to help somebody litigate in a courtroom their rights as it relates to an insurance policy.
Bob, look, we talked about it, and this is one of the things that we've covered, and I think we should have done a number of shows on the insurance end of it. You've got a great practice. We work with your office. You do great work. Northeast Philly, Ryan, Rob. I mean, I don't know. Right. Maybe we're just attracting.
We're not going to hold that against you, Ryan.
So look, and I don't want to offend anybody else out there, the Judge people, or North people, or whatever.
Roman people.
Tell me about your practice in regard to the insurance. I have an insurance policy. Give me a little taste, because we're going to have you guys back.
Yeah.
Give me a little taste about what you do to review an insurance policy. Free? If I have an auto insurance, and I need someone to look at the policy, will you do that free?
Absolutely. Call us at our firm. I'm at Hoffman, Sternberg,
tell
Lynch.
me what you're looking for.
And we're looking to see what type of coverage you have. We want to make sure you're protected. There are state minimums in Pennsylvania that you're required to have, bodily injury protection. That is not for you. That is to protect someone else. So if you cause an accident, that's the pot of money that they go after. That doesn't help you. Property damage, okay? That's if you strike another car, that's for that. PIP coverage, personal injury protection, that's the medical coverage. But what if someone hits you and doesn't have enough insurance? What if someone hits you and doesn't have any insurance? You need to purchase underinsured motorist coverage or uninsured motorist coverage or collision coverage to protect your vehicle. These are things that they don't tell you. And when they tell you have full coverage, quote unquote full coverage, that's misleading. Talk to a personal injury attorney like myself. We'll do a free insurance evaluation. As you said, Sam, with Social Security disability, know what you're getting in your paycheck. Know what you're paying for. So many people pay countless thousands of dollars a year for motor vehicle insurance and have no idea what their coverage is. Contact your personal injury lawyer. They will tell you if you're protected.
Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond as we come to you live from down at Chickie's and Pete's here in South Philadelphia. It's a two-part show tonight. Hour number 1 on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT live from Chickie's. We'll continue with part 2, and we'll have Robert and Adam join us in hour number 2. Special thanks to Tommy for hustling up to the set and tripping over that microphone wire that caused that slight delay before I was able to get the audio up.
Somebody else's fault.
That's it. We'll get to a commercial break. We'll continue. We're going to introduce everybody when we come back after the break to Sonny Wimberly. Back in a moment. And back here on Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond as we come to you live from down at Chickie's and Pete's on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT. Sam?
I'm not going to waste a lot of time because we're in the last segment. We only have 7 minutes. I want to get into Nick Merrimer from my office. Nick, you have been an inspiration to everybody in the office about what's going on with the Rough Riders, Team Foster. You were in the JAG. You're a veteran. You're still on active duty. I believe you're serving. When were you serving?
I served on active duty from 2000 2004, and I've been in the reserve since 2012.
Weren't you just doing your weekend thing?
Oh, I had weekend duty yesterday.
Yeah. Thanks for coming back. talk to me about Team Foster. First of all, I want to announce, and I want everyone to know about this event that's coming up for Team Foster. Tell us about Team Foster, the event, and the Rough Riders, and our special guest, Sonny.
Awesome. So Team Foster is an organization I founded in honor of my friend, Captain Eric Foster. Eric was killed in action in 2007. In 2014, I formed an organization, a nonprofit 501c3 called Team Foster. We raise money to provide service dogs for injured vets. We've been doing that. We're an all-volunteer organization, and we rely exclusively on the time and the energy of our volunteers as well as our business partners like Pond Hockey. We have our premier event coming up on May 31st, and it's called Rough Rod. It's a 24-hour spin relay. It's going to be held right downstairs at Commerce Square at 21st and Market on May 31st.
We had this last year. It was a great event in the common area at our offices of One Commerce, Two Commerce, between the two. Great event. I would listen, folks. Sign up for this event. It's just a matter. We've had the service dogs in the office. It's fantastic, wonderful. Tell us about your guest here tonight with us, and tell us about that situation with Rough Riders.
Absolutely. I brought along a good friend of mine, retired First Sergeant Sonny Wimberly. He also brought along his companion Juno, as well as his wife Roxanne. Sonny's going to tell you a little bit about his background, but he is a graduate, and Juno's a graduate of our Cells to Service program, the Team Foster funds. So I'm going to turn it over to Sonny. Tell us a little bit about your background and how it is that you got connected with Juno.
Well, a little bit about my background. Nick said I'm a First Sergeant, retired, almost 20 years now. But I've had some problems, some physical problems, and along came the best thing could happen to anyone, and that was a project that Nick has pioneered and led to me and has really been a great thing in my life. Service dogs do an awful lot, more than I can possibly put into words, but emotionally, they're the best thing that could happen. They give you another reason to stick around, another good reason to stay here. They're also great for helping. I don't have the ability to walk everywhere, so my dog does a lot of retrieving. He does a lot of retrieving. We're working on a number of things. We're on the finance now. He's completed his public access testing, so that's what he's graduated from. Now we're working on personal things that he does for me. He can find my phone, which I lose a lot, bring it to me, my cane if I need it. Just about anything. Right now we're working on him taking laundry. Today we had a good session. And learning about the training of a dog, it's amazing. I got to shout out for at least One Love, who's the trainers, do an excellent job of teaching not just me, but also the inmates in the prison where he came from originally. Now this is a win-win-win. It's a rescue dog that gives the inmates an opportunity to actually learn how to train a dog, and that's a 12-week program. And then after about 6 weeks with the pro trainers, they put him together with a veteran, myself. And I couldn't be more pleased. I have to say thank you to everybody, especially Pond Hockey, everybody here, and everybody's had a part in this. And there's been a number of people involved. One Love Rescue actually rescued the dog. And then there's always my partner that's always been with us, takes great care of her boys. That's Roxanne Wimberly, my wife. I have to mention her because she does a great job.
All right.
And she keeps us together.
I got news for you. You got a great beauty there.
Well, thank you.
You are a lucky man, and I've met Roxanne just this evening, and what a lovely lady. But fine gentleman, and I just, as you said, I think, Nick, win-win. Top to bottom.
Win-win-win. The dog gets rescued, the inmates get something to do, they get training, they get skills, and that dog ultimately ends up with a veteran. And if you want to come out and you want to meet Sonny and people like Sonny who are taking advantage of these services, you can come out to Rough Ride on May 31st and come out to Commerce Square. Title sponsor, Pond Hockey came in big, they came in heavy. Our firm understands more than most the value of what our veterans have done for our community and what the value is of helping them out when they return. One service dog can cost upwards of $25,000. And there are no programs through the VA, there are no federal insurance programs, there are no federal programs out there through the government. So we have now put someone in harm's way. So for instance, Sonny is a Vietnam veteran, he has a Purple Heart. from Vietnam. He's a wounded combat veteran, and he comes back and he has challenges. And it's,
Awesome.
the current way to deal with it is to say, hey, you're on your own, figure it out. Team Foster fills that gap, and Rough Ride is a way to raise some money and have a good time to help the support.
Well, thank you for your service, Sonny.
Thank you, Sonny.
And
Thank you.
Keep it up. And look, you're an inspiration, and just we need to educate people about this program to fill the void. It's so important. And I can just feel the whole energy about you and what you've done and with your dog and your lovely wife, Roxanne. Thank you for joining us.
And thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sonny.
That's going to do it for our live edition of Legal Eagles Radio with Sam Pond here on Talk Radio 1210 WPHT as we come to you live from Chickie's and Pete's in South Philadelphia as we close the show. And we thank everybody for being a part of the live broadcast, Sam. I am sorry that our time ended with Sonny before we say goodbye.
We're going to have Sonny back.
On behalf of our gracious host, Sam Pond, and all of our listeners around the Delaware Valley and J-Doc, I'm Joe Krause. See you next time, everybody.
This program is a paid commercial announcement and in no way represents the views of WPHT or its management.